Everyone knows how bad this bill is. I know it, you know it. Even the Republicans in the House and the Senate who are voting for this bill know and will tell you just how bad it is. It seems like the only person who doesn't understand that is Donald Trump. And it's not just because he doesn't care that people are going to be kicked off their health care, that people won't have access to SNAP benefits, that he is breaking the fundamental promise of his campaign that he would lower costs. No. It's because Donald Trump doesn't remember. Donald Trump quite literally doesn't know. And that was all revealed in a scandal that is exposing the cognitive decline we've been talking about for so long by Republicans. We are going to get into it all. But before we do, I want to start with what's happening right now in Congress, and that is Hakeem Jeffries fighting back against this bill. And I want to take a look right here.
Mr. Speaker, these 13 members of the House Republican Conference make this extraordinary representation. It says, however, we cannot and will not support a final reconciliation bill that includes any reduction in Medicaid coverage for vulnerable populations. This bill represents the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. It will devastate vulnerable populations all across America. And so the reality is all 212 House Democrats are going to stand up and protect the health care of the American people. We're going to protect the Medicaid of the American people against this assault on vulnerable communities. And I'm looking forward to all 13 of you joining us.
Leader Jeffries has been talking on the floor for hours now, and Republicans are furious. So much of the reason that they want to pass this bill, besides the fact that Donald Trump wants to throw himself a 4th of July party, is because they are more worried about themselves and getting home to enjoy their summer vacation with their families than they are doing the actual job of service. Do they realize that because they're ripping people's health care away, they will spend less time with their families, more time working to be able to afford higher premiums, more time away being sick because of a broken health care system? Do they not understand that or care? Clearly not. But like I said, Donald Trump doesn't even understand that. Or no, Jamie Raskin pointed it out right here, which was then followed by this break-in report we're going to get into.
Well, that's precisely how I think I upset him, Lawrence. I simply said if the president is lecturing the Republicans that they should never touch Medicaid or Medicare or Social Security, he clearly does not know what's in his own bill. And I didn't lob that at him as an accusation, but simply as a statement, because he would not be saying those things if he understood that that's what their bill does. They're talking about throwing 17 million Americans off of their health insurance. It's a $1 trillion cut in Medicaid. Meantime, he's telling them that they shouldn't be touching Medicaid. So I pointed that out. Apparently, it came to his attention, and he just launched into one of his inimitable diatribes. I suppose I don't mind being called a loser several times by Donald Trump, given that he's our only president who has lost the popular vote for president in 2 different elections. And the last time, when he lost by more than 7 million votes to Joe Biden, it upset him so much that he incited an insurrection against the Constitution, against his own vice president, and against the Congress of the United States.
We covered this morning, but Donald Trump freaked out last night on Truth Social as Jamie Raskin made a very probably likely accusation that Donald Trump doesn't even know or understand what's in this bill. Now, that could be because he didn't read it. Donald Trump doesn't really know how to read, and the thing is 900 pages. But a recent report that came out yesterday detailing Republican members of Congress who went to the White House to speak to Donald Trump about this bill, it leaks their conversation and just shows that Donald Trump might be completely out of it. But we are touching Medicaid. Trump confused about what's in his mega bill. Donald Trump appears to not be entirely clear on the scope of the health care cuts in his big, beautiful bill he has aggressively lobbied Republicans in Congress to pass, Notice reported on Wednesday. And he had to be reminded of it by a handful of Republican lawmakers in a meeting behind closed doors. The bill, passed by the Senate in a narrowly divided vote on Tuesday morning, is currently awaiting final passage in the House as GOP leaders attempt to smooth over fractional disagreements to proceed to a final roll call. It cuts over $1 trillion from Medicaid, food assistance, and green energy credits while extending tax breaks for the wealthy, massively boosting immigration enforcement funding, and adding over $2 trillion to the federal deficit. Trump hosted a meeting with some moderates and some members of the Main Street Caucus on Wednesday where he listened to concerns and touted the wins in the legislation. Two sources told Notice, reported Riley Rogerson and Reese Gorman. However, Trump still doesn't seem to have a firm grasp about what his signature legislative achievement does. According to three sources with direct knowledge of the comments, the president told Republicans at the meeting that there are three things Congress shouldn't touch if they want to win elections: Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. At this, one of the Republicans in attendance piped up and reminded him, "But we are touching Medicaid in this bill." As early as February, Trump proclaimed he would not cut Medicaid even as he endorsed a House budget blueprint that all but guaranteed significant cuts to the public insurance program. In response to the new report, White House spokesperson Abigail Jackson said the bill takes decisive action to protect Medicaid generations to come by eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse in the program. Donald Trump is committed to protecting Medicaid for the vulnerable Americans who rely on it most. Yeah, no, obviously that's a lie. He's not protecting Medicaid. He's throwing people off of their insurance. And he doesn't even seem to understand that he's doing that. He just doesn't get it. He's confused. He's forgotten. His brain is pudding. It's any of those reasons, but it's incredibly concerning. Republicans would make up stories that this is what Joe Biden was like at the end of his presidency, while at the same time, Kevin McCarthy admitting multiple times during their negotiations that Biden had outsmarted him. If there was a report of a Democrat saying that they had to remind President Biden what was in his own budget, how would the mainstream media treat that? This is a clear scandal of Donald Trump's cognitive ability, and somehow the mainstream press doesn't want to cover it. Is just they don't want to cover the fact that Donald Trump is ripping health care away from millions of people. They haven't covered it nearly to the extent that they should. But someone who is making sure that they do is Governor Andy Beshear, who we recently had on the show, but he was on MSNBC this morning.
Food assistance, which, my faith teaches me that in a country that grows enough food for everybody, nobody should starve. I mean, the miracle of the fishes and the loaves is in every book of the gospel. But look at what they're doing. Seniors and children are going to go to bed and wake up hungry. That's just wrong. And just the administrative costs pushed on Kentucky is an extra $66 million. So you think about plugging other holes. On top of that, you have the president not approving public assistance after natural disasters. That may cost my state another $300 million. So what this federal government is doing is fiscally wrong. It's going to add, trillions of dollars to the federal debt, but it's also going to blow up every single state budget where we have to balance those budgets. And I don't buy for a minute that they have to cause all this pain just for a tax cut. In Kentucky, I've expanded Medicaid while at the same time lowering the income tax and the property tax rate multiple times.
Governor, as a governor of a red state, you're a Democrat, but you, by definition, have to work with Republicans. You always have. You continue to do that. How do you explain the vote taken by Republicans in Washington right now in Capitol Hill, all of whom know exactly what you've just said, that it is going to cost their own constituents, the place where they live, the people who voted for them, their health care in some cases, or the hospital that they've counted on for all of their lives? Is it anything more than feeling the pressure from President Trump, who was up all night calling members, who was up all night posting to social media saying MAGA will not be happy with you, talking about his own movement if you vote against my bill? In other words, how do you explain the members of Congress, let's just take your state of Kentucky, voting against the interests of many of their constituents?
Well, it seems like they care more about being a good Republican than a good representative or senator. I mean, they're elected to represent the people of their districts. And for every Kentucky congressman or senator that's voting for this, it hammers their constituents. People are going to lose their jobs that voted for them and that voted for the president. I mean, people have lost their way if they think their number one job is to stick with their party instead of their people. You look at all the congressional delegation that voted for it in Kentucky, every single one has a rural or an urban hospital that's going to get hit. Every single one is going to run into someone that's going to lose their health care and not be able to get a cancer treatment. Every single one has people in their districts that will die if they do not have health care coverage. Listen, I remember when we expanded Medicaid, my dad was governor at the time, and I was in an elevator with him when a woman walked in, burst into tears, and said, I'd be dead without you, without that expansion. She could not get coverage because they considered cancer a pre-existing condition. But with the expansion of Medicaid and the ACA, she could. These are real lives at stake. These are real people. And this is a huge betrayal. People care more about their families than they do their political party. And so Democrats, Republicans, and independents in Kentucky are going to react and react incredibly negatively when their friends are losing their jobs at their hospital.
Governor, it's Ali Vitale in Washington. We were just talking with Ken Martin, the head of the DNC, about how this bill, in terms of the issues that it brings up, is a gift politically in some ways for Democrats to take back out on the campaign trail in 2026. But there are concerns from advocates about the message, this perennial concern that we've heard since 2024. You're someone who has been playing in the space of trying to find different ways of communicating with new constituencies. What do you see in this bill, and how do you think it could be best communicated by Democrats as they head into this midterm year?
Well, as Democrats, we've got to recognize that when people wake up in the morning, they're not thinking about their next election. They're thinking about their job and whether they make enough to support their family. A lot of jobs are going to be lost. They're thinking about their next doctor's appointment and how far they have to drive. It's about to get a lot tougher. They're thinking about the roads and bridges in their community. They're thinking about the school they drop their kids off at. And they're thinking about whether they feel safe in their community. And if they don't have a hospital that ambulance is going to rush them to, they are not as safe as they were before. We've got to talk about the impacts about this bill and the everyday terms of how it makes people's lives harder, and it does. And if you combine that with tariffs and costs going up on everyone, this president has done everything he promised not to. I think he ended up getting elected because people believed he'd make paying the bills just a little bit easier, and it's about to get a whole lot tougher.
I'm glad that we have a red state governor highlighting just how disproportionately affected Republicans will be by this, a betrayal by Donald Trump, to point out the fact he simply does not care about you. That is their politics. It is a petty one that serves them as individuals and their billionaire donors, and that's it. And we have to continue to call that out. We're certainly going to on this show, and if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.